Controversial opinion here. I don't think there are a lot of great or elite tight ends in the NFL. I think most NFL teams, the vast majority of them in fact, have an okay or a replacement level starter for them at the tight end position. Now, I don't know that for sure. That's what this exercise is all about, because I'm going to be ranking the top 45 tight ends in the NFL, and we will see at the end of the video where most of these tight ends lie, what tiers they lie in. Now, this is going to include rookie tight ends. It's a really good rookie tight end draft class, and without them, I think this ranking would look even uglier, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, this does include an element of projection, therefore, and it is only for the 2025 NFL season, not beyond there. So age isn't going to really be a factor unless we're already seeing that impact that player's game. Now, let me explain what these tiers are. First, we have the elite tier. This is the difference-making receiving threat, the team's #1 receiver, essentially. Think prime Travis Kelce, or it could even be a fantastic combination of blocking and receiving ability. Think prime Rob Gronkowski, for example. Teams have to game plan, defenses have to game plan around that tight end if they don't want to lose the game. Then we have the great tier. These are reliable, consistently productive. They may not be elite, but they are clear offensive assets. Then we have the good tier. These are solid starters. They're not going to blow you away with their production or their athleticism or their physicality. They're not going to strike fear into the hearts of defenses, but you can definitely rely on those guys to make a play when needed, but you don't want to rely on them to do so. And then we have the replacement level tight ends. Pretty large range here. This can be anything from a serviceable, solid starter, but not much more than that really, and quite a lot less than that. Like someone that's a low impact in the passing attack, a fine depth piece maybe, but not what you want, I think, from your starting tight end. Now, I've also not included primarily blocking tight ends, much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of the real nitty-gritty tight end lovers that I'm sure are out there. Someone like a Chris Manahertz or a Jackson Horse from Georgia Tech this year, for example, aren't being included. I appreciate what they do for the game, but ultimately, for the best tight ends, we're looking at them being a weapon in the passing attack. So, without further ado, let's get into it, and we're going to start with Dawson Knox, the Bills tight end. Now, this is kind of the definition, really, of what I'm talking about throughout this whole video. Where is Dawson Knox going to rank in these tiers? He had his peak in 2021 and 2022 of really just being a fine tight end. I think he's a clear tight end 2 now for the Bills, and he's a pretty serviceable one at that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock Dawson Knox. He's good in his role, definitely. He does have a history of drops, 14.3% in 2023. He only had 356 yards, 1 touchdown from 26 catches on 37 targets last year. And interestingly, the Bills, despite having a pretty decent tight end 2, don't actually use that much 12 personnel. 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 1, 2, 12. For those of you that don't know, they only use 12 personnel 13% of the time, which is one of the lowest rates in the NFL. Kincaid is the clear #1. We'll talk about Kincaid when we get to him. Knox is a decent blocker. It's kind of mostly what he's used for in terms of when he does get on the field for the Bills. I mean, I think he is the very definition of a replaceable tight end. To be perfectly honest with you, we'll see where the others rank after him. Tommy Tremble for the Panthers. He got signed to a new contract this offseason, $8 million guaranteed. Not quite sure why. An interesting move from the Panthers, who probably need money and would want to save it for when they really need it. But anyway, I think Tommy Tremble, he's been a merchant after that hurdle he had against the Dolphins maybe a few years ago now, which has kind of, I think, skewed people's visions on Tommy Tremble. He's really not produced that much. 234 yards in 2024, 194 yards in 2023, 174 yards in 2022. Again, kind like a replacement level tight end. Would I have Dawson Knox or Tommy Tremble? I'd probably rather have Dawson Knox. Now, our first rookie, Harold Fannon Jr. This guy, at least in college, was a dynamic receiving threat for Bowling Green. He had 100 receptions, 1,342 yards, 9 touchdowns, was great after the catch, had 750 yards after the catch in 2024, 7.5 yards after the catch per reception. Those numbers weren't quite as good in 2023, but were still definitely up there, and he forced 36 total missed tackles. So he is a really good weapon in the passing game, at least at the college level. He's a decent route runner for his size. He's also like a weirdly You want Strat running. He tries to do quite a lot for someone that is quite big. And he's not going to be a factor in the blocking game, realistically, Harold Fannon Jr. He is going to play with his teammate David Njoku. Talk about him later as well. So he's not going to really be used as a blocker. I think he's going to be used as that kind of big slot, which you see quite a lot of tight ends being used at the moment. And in the Browns offense, there's a bit of a lack of wide receiver talent. Yes, there's Joe Jeudy. Yes, there's also the Tennessee receiver whose name is escaping me right now. Anyway, there's no one on the Browns roster wide receiver wise that means that I don't think someone like Harold Fannon Jr. isn't going to see quite a lot of usage and will kind of be that power slot player. So will the Browns run more 12 personnel this year? I think they probably will. I don't see why you draft Harold Fannon Jr. and then not do that with David Njoku. Again, those two are kind of the better receivers on the team despite playing tight end. So for now, I will put Harold Fannon Jr. in the good tier. There is an element of projection there. Yes, absolutely. But if he is even half as good as he was in college, he will be a very good receiving tight end threat. Can't really knock that. Now, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more NFL offseason content. And we now have Mark Andrews. This guy was elite. He was an elite tight end. In 2021, he had 1,361 yards. He was the team's wide receiver one. But in recent years, the Ravens have drafted Zay Flowers. They've also been using Isaiah Likely some more. And last year, especially at the beginning of the season, he kind of struggled with consistency, really. He definitely still has it, though. He's been reliable in big situations. Ravens are the team which uses the 12 personnel the fifth most in the league at 31%. And Likely, who we'll talk about later as well, is a really nice complement as that more kind of power slot when Mark Andrews is that more traditional tight end. He is 30, that window's closing. He is on the twilight years of his career now. Definitely not what he once was. But, I mean, I'm still going to put him in the great or the good. I think Mark Andrews now is still a great tight end. I would say he is. He's going to go in great, maybe the back end of great, but we'll see where he ends up when we have the other ones. Dalton Kincaid, the other tight end for the Buffalo Bills. We just did Dawson Knox and now on Dalton Kincaid. He's the receiving threat. Dawson Knox is more of the blocking guy. Kincaid is that kind of big slot, again-esque kind of tight end. He was drafted with the 26th overall pick in the first round 2 years ago. I don't think he's overly dynamic, though, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm left wanting a bit more from Dalton Kincaid, I think. And I think Bills fans would agree with me. And if you do, let me know in the comments. If you don't, let me know in the comments. That drop versus Kansas City was a killer. I know it wasn't an easy catch, but you've got to have those. I'm sorry, you've got to have those. And if you're not dynamic as a wide receiver, and if you're not dominant as a blocker, then at least be reliable in those kind of situations. And unfortunately, Kincaid in that instance wasn't. Now, I'm not going to hold a single play against him, don't worry, but I think that was kind of symptomatic of the wider problem with Kincaid in the sense that I actually want him to be better than he is, really. Now, he is a good receiving threat, don't get me wrong. He can separate well versus man coverage, just not quite as good as other tight ends, I don't think. I don't think I would describe Kincaid as a great tight end, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'm going to put him at the top of good for now. Definitely ahead of Harold Fannon Jr., definitely more proven, but I can't put Kincaid in the great tier, I feel. Tyler Higbee, Western Kentucky Hilltopper's finest right here, actually has had a very decent career in LA, to be perfectly honest with you. Been a consistently reliable tight end and a receiving threat as well. He's, not better than replacement level, realistically. He might be at the back of good. Would he be in the back of good, or would he be at the top of replaceable? I mean, they drafted his replacement this year, so by definition, but he's going to get the top end of that, definitely. I do think, look, replaceable doesn't mean you're bad. It just means that no one's going to put up a fight if you want to draft someone better. And the Rams have done that this offseason, so I think that's kind of fair. Jake Ferguson, in 2023, this guy had 854 yards and 8 touchdowns. Last year, in 2024, the Cowboys' offense imploded, as we know. And I think that was reflected in Jake Ferguson's 2024 stat line. I liked what I saw in 2023. He was, I'm willing to bank on that more so than 2024, definitely. And I think he will be a reliable receiving threat behind George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. So I'm going to put him in good, and I'm going to put him ahead of Harold Fannon Jr., but behind Kincaid, I feel. Behind Kincaid. Colston Loveland. a fantastic rookie. Cannot wait to see this guy play. I think he has elite potential as a receiving threat from the tight end position, especially with Ben Johnson and that new offense and Caleb Williams. Hopefully he takes a step this year. And there is, yes, a lot of mouths to feed on the Bears offense. You've got Luther Burden, you've got Rem Odunze, you've got DJ Moore, you've obviously got the running backs, you've already got Cole Kmet there as well. But I feel that this is going to be a fantastic place for him to shine. He had struggled with production last year with a terrible quarterback situation in Michigan, but he showed some elite route running chops. He looked fantastic, even if the balls that were being thrown his way were entirely uncatchable. And I think, to be fair, he's a much better run blocker than I initially, and many others, but I gave him credit for when I first evaluated him. And he's not too light either. It's not like he can't be even better than he already is, and that projection. Now, Ben Johnson was 4th with the Lions last year in using 12 personnel at 32%, so almost a third of his snaps involved 2 tight ends on the field. I think Loveland is going to massively benefit from that. Yes, there is Cole Kmet. I think Loveland will be the starter, and I think when they want to get Cole Kmet on the field, they'll just do 12 personnel. I'm sure there'll be instances, but realistically, Loveland is not going to be benched for Kmet for anything after week 3, I don't think. So I'm going to put him in great now, because I do think that whilst his ceiling is elite, I'm going to put him ahead of Mark Andrews as well. Right now, I'd rather have Colston Loveland for 2025 than Mark Andrews, I think. Again, based on the projection, I know they haven't played a snap in the NFL, Colston Loveland and indeed Harold Fannon Jr., but we evaluated these guys as rookies. I've seen Colston Loveland's tape. I feel like I know him quite well. I'm confident in my projection that he is going to be a great NFL tight end this year. And I think he could be a great one, an elite one rather, in 2 to 3 years' time. Maybe not this year, but we'll see afterwards. I'll keep him in great for now, but let it be known, elite potential there. Evan Engram was underwhelming for the Giants generally relative to his draft position. He was drafted 23rd. Quite a lot of first-round tight ends. You'll see a trend here. Kind of under-deliver. I really wouldn't love drafting tight ends in the first round, considering their track record of panning out. He was drafted 23rd in 2017, but for Jacksonville, for the Jaguars, for the last few years, up until he's now moved to the Denver Broncos, was a pretty good receiving threat. Like, he will be he'll be peppered targets by Bo Nix and Sean Payton's offense, who was one of the offenses where Jimmy Graham really came out of his own. And obviously, Evan Engram is not the same physically in terms of his profile, but athletically there are some shades there now. Evan Engram is not Jimmy Graham. I'm not saying anything outrageous like that, but Sean Payton has had a, squint your eyes and stand really far back, a sort of similar-ish prospect at tight end, and it worked very well for him and for Sean Payton. And you can see something like that happening to Evan Engram, definitely, with what he offers as a receiving threat tight end. And the fact that Evan Engram, the fact that I think I have to put him in good. I'll put him ahead of Harold Fannon Jr. because if Harold Fannon Jr. this year gives you an Evan Engram level of production, that's a good season from him. But the fact that Evan Engram is going in good is a pretty sad state of affairs for tight ends, I think, because he is overall not anyone, doesn't move anyone, right? No one looks at Evan Engram and goes, I want that guy on my team. Obviously, the Broncos did because they had no other tight end, but that's kind of what I'm saying. At the moment, we've got a lot of, a lot of replacement tight ends. Got a few more to go, though. Dalton Schultz for the Texans, my team. I mean, he is the definition of a good, not great tight end. I think, literally the poster child for it. You don't want or need to replace Dalton Schultz, but it's not like you would stop yourself from getting one of those elite prospects either. So I think Dalton Schultz is pretty much what I'm talking about here. He's better than Jake Ferguson, and I'd probably rather have Kincaid than Schultz, just because I think Kincaid's a little more dynamic as a receiving threat, but I think Schultz is probably more solid overall. That's fair for now, I think. Now, Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends to ever do it, no doubt about that. He's had 9 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons from 2015 to 2023. He had 998 yards last year. Do those 2 yards make a difference in how good of a player he is? No. Would it also have been nice for him to have 10 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons? Yeah, definitely. He is also one of the best duos in the NFL, or one of the best duos to ever play in the NFL, I think. Him and Patrick Mahomes, and the chemistry they have and how good they are off script together is part of why Kelce is so damn good, frankly. He's so good out of structure. He's really good after the catch. He hit a high of 6.1 yards after the catch per reception at one point in his career. But has he lost a step? I think probably. I think most people would agree with that as well. I think we started to see that last year. He still had, even Travis Kelce, on a bit of a downturn in his career, still had 110 receptions, 998 yards, as I said, and 427 yards after the catch. Like, it's an amazing season, but not as good as it once was, I think. And he's turning 36, so that is only natural. I want to see him go out on top. I don't want to see any player cut their career short, but I also think too many players kind of cling on for too long. There's a quote here in the UK you hear a lot, leave the football before the football leaves you. And I think that's applicable to Travis Kelce. I would like this to be his last season, not because I don't want to see him play anymore, I do, but I think it'd be great to see him bow out at the top of his game. Where's he going to go, though? Where is he going to go? I think you've still got to put him in elite, considering that I think my mind on Travis Kelce is being skewed by the fact that he's kind of on the downturn. But Travis Kelce on the downturn is still comfortably a top 5 tight end in the league. I think definitely so, and I think that would be in the elite tier. It might be at the end of it, but I think he's still elite. For one more year, he's still elite. Mason Taylor, the Jets rookie tight end, I think he's going to be pretty good immediately for the Jets. Actually, he's a fluid athlete, good separation skills, he's good after the catch, really safe hands, only one drop last year in college. And the second round draft stock means that this guy's going to see the field early. And the fact that there's no real receiving threat apart from Garrett Wilson on that offense at the moment means I think Mason Taylor is going to see quite a lot of production out the gate as well. And with a quarterback like Justin Fields, who might rely on a tight end more as that safety blanket, I can see Mason Taylor putting up some decent numbers in his first year. So I really like the potential with Mason Taylor. I'm gonna put him. We'll put him behind Kincaid in the good tier for now. Am I sitting on the fence with a lot of these by putting a lot of these tight ends in good? We'll see. We'll see at the end. Now, Brock Bowers. Can't wait to talk about this guy. 112 receptions last year, 1,194 yards, 5 touchdowns, 569 yards after the catch. Finally, a rookie tight end broke Mike Ditka's record from 1961. How that record has lasted as long as it has baffles me, genuinely baffles me, and is one of only 3 rookie tight ends to break 1,000 yards in their first season. One of them we'll talk about later in this list. Now, he was dominant in college, absolutely dominant. I remember I tried to make a video on Brock Bowers for the 2022 NFL draft, and I didn't realize that he wasn't even eligible yet when I first kind of started making these kind of videos on TikTok. He was fantastic. Like, you don't get someone that's been dominant for 3 years in college and then not going to suddenly be good in the NFL. I think there are some projections which are really easy, and Brock Bowers was one of the easiest ones you'll ever have if you're someone that likes to draft. It was just so easy, and he's an elite receiving threat. He was their number 1 receiver last year for the Raiders. Defenses do have to scheme around him, and this is what I'm talking about when I talk about an elite tight end. I think I'd rather have Brock Bowers next year than Travis Kelce as well. Hunter Henry. It actually annoys me that he's been pretty decent throughout his career. When I looked at some of his tape and when I looked at some of his numbers, I was expecting to just slam Hunter Henry in the replacement level tight end, because that's what I thought of or think of when I think that most teams have a replacement level starter. But Hunter Henry's, it's going to be difficult for me to justify putting him in replacement, to be frank. He on paper should be, but he's averaging a solid 600 yards per season at the moment since 2019. I think he's kind of got it going good now, but is Hunter Henry replaceable? I feel like he is. I feel like Hunter Henry is. It's really hard. Does production mean that they are not? Does that mean they're not replaceable? I don't know if that is the case. I mean, he's kind of been on the Patriots, not been a lot of dynamic receiving threats for them. Hunter Henry's kind of been on the team, so he's going to get some target share there. I'm going to put him in replaceable. I'm going to put Hunter Henry in replaceable. He's been good, but I think he's replaceable by definition. I don't think anyone, if the Patriots drafted a young tight end this year, I don't think anyone would bat an eyelid, because Hunter Henry is replaceable. Theo Johnson, he was a rookie last year. Also, a lot of the same schools produce these tight ends. You get a lot of Penn States, you get a lot of Notre Dames, you get a lot of Iowa State. It's quite interesting. Theo Johnson looked pretty good, actually, from weeks 8 to 13. Then he got injured. But the athletic profile that he has is crazy. 91st percentile 40, around a 4.57. 96th percentile vert, 93rd percentile broad jump. I think with better quarterback play, and the Giants really not having a proper wide receiver too after Malik Neighbors. Yes, they got Darius Slayton. Yes, they got Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't think either of those guys would stop Theo Johnson from trying to kind of carve out a good role in that offense. I like the potential. We didn't see a lot of it last year, but I think I've got to put him in good. But we'll put him... I'd rather have Theo Johnson than Harold Fannon Jr., I think. I wasn't too high on Fannon Jr. Now, Trey McBride. We have a new generation of elite tight ends, I think now. We've obviously had Travis Kelce, we've had Rob Gronkowski, we've had Mark Andrews, and some of those guys are gone or are going. And to get them in, we've now got Brock Bowers, and I think we've got Trey McBride. I think he showed last year that he can be an elite tight end. He was just behind Brock Bowers in every single stat. Comfortably the second best tight end in the league if we're looking at the pure stats here as a receiver. 111 receptions, 1,146 yards, 2 touchdowns, 526 yards after the catch. And he did all that by missing 3 games as well. So if we extrapolate that further, he would have led the league from the tight end position in receiving yards out of the catch, receptions, etc. Like the Triple Crown winner, if you will, from the tight end position. And he can be the Cardinals' number 1 receiving threat, quite clearly with those numbers. He's consistently getting open. He's consistently making plays. Seasons like that don't just magically happen for tight ends. Yeah, they might stumble into 400 yards by just being the team's number 1 tight end. You don't stumble into 1,100 yards just by luck as a tight end. That is not easy. So Trey McBride is going in the elite, and I would have him next year ahead of Travis Kelce. Just because Kelce's on that downturn, I think Trey McBride could be even better next year. Juwan Johnson. Quietly, the Saints have made if you combine Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau's production, you get a pretty good receiver, a pretty good tight end, rather. Now, the problem is that they are 2 guys. I think they're pretty similar in what they offer you as well. They were interestingly using them quite nicely in pass protection last year, sending like Juwan Johnson in pass pro against Micah Parsons, then sending Foster Moreau against Micah Parsons on that same rep, having like waves of tight ends blocking you, which really stunted Micah Parsons, actually. It was really interesting to see. He did have almost 600 receiving yards last year, but Chris Olave was out for a lot of it. Not a lot of receiving talent. That offense imploded after week 4. I think both him and Foster Moreau, despite together making a decent tight end room, but they're 2 separate guys. I'm going to put both of them in the replacement level. I think Juwan Johnson's slightly better than Foster Moreau, so let's go like that. I think Tyler Higbee's better than Foster Moreau. Darnell Washington. Free my boy Darnell. Genuinely. Just set this guy loose, right, and let him be a decent receiving threat, which I think he could be, or just bulk this guy up. Let him go in the offseason, eat whatever he puts his eyes on, and I think he could be a fantastic tackle. I think it's a bit of a shame, actually. I think that's what he should have done. His movement skills, his strength, his athletic profile just works so much better for tackle now. He is one of the better blocking tight ends in the league. I've kept him in this because he also is a receiving threat, and a good one at that. Don't best believe me. But he is a tight end too, as a blocker. I think he could definitely offer more in the passing game. If the Steelers weren't so steadfast in their ways and actually had decent quarterback play and tried to actually make something of their offense rather than just coasting to maybe a playoff berth and then losing in the first round, Darnell Washington could be part of unlocking that offense. I think his physical traits are crazy. I think what we saw at Georgia was unbelievable. Again, it was these short glimpses, but I don't know why we're not seeing more of those glimpses. I think his level of athleticism is what you want in the NFL at a tight end position. Now, it's a shame that he's going to go in the good tier. I think he could be a lot more than that, but we've not seen it really. I'd have him after Jake Ferguson, I think. I'd like to put Darnell Washington higher, but I just don't think we're going to see much from him with the way that he's being used at the moment. So we'll see. George Kittle. I think he's the best tight end in the league as a combination of blocker and passer. I think, he's not quite the level of Rob Gronkowski, but he does have what made Gronkowski so great in the sense that you have to factor for not just Kittle's passing or run after the catch ability and him as a passing weapon, which is fantastic, but you've also got to factor him as a blocker as well. And that's what is so dangerous about tight ends. When you get that combination of blocking and of pass catching, you can have a chess piece that you can move all around your offense. You can't put a linebacker on Kittle in case he's running a route. He's going to get absolutely cooked. You can't put a safety on Kittle in case it's a running play. He's going to get blocked off the screen. So, and he's produced as well. He's had, 1,106 yards last year, 1,132 yards the year before that. 500 plus yards after the catch in both of those years as well. And he's done that on a stacked 49ers offense with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, some of those guys have missed time over that period. But to put up that level of production in an offense like that with guys on the field of that caliber is not easy. And it's because George Kittle is elite. I think he right now, for me, over the last 2 years, just that window of the last 2 years, has been the best tight end in the NFL. And I think going into next year, there is no one I would rather have at my tight end position than George Kittle. Frankly, I'd be surprised if anyone can dethrone him from that number one spot. Tucker Kraft, the Packers had a kind of Ravens-esque meta here. When you draft two tight ends in the same draft class and the one drafted later is the better one. In 2023, Tucker Kraft was drafted in the 3rd round behind Luke Musgrave. And Tucker Kraft, I think, is the perfect tight end for Matt LaFleur's offense. He's good after the catch. He's positionally versatile. You can line up in line, out wide, in the slot. He's a better blocker than you'd expect as well. And I just think he's that perfect fit in the offense. He's a perfect weapon for Jordan Love. I think he's good as a complementary weapon to a generally smaller wide receiver core, and someone like Jaden Reed and someone now like, who was it? The Texas wide receiver, Matthew Golden. So Tucker Kraft gives you a bit of height, a bit of weight, which I think the Packers offense needs. He's in between good and great, but I'm going to put him... God, there's a lot of good here, which I'm not loving. But I think Tucker Kraft could be great next year. I think Tucker Kraft could be great. I've got too many goods at the moment. I'm sitting on the fence too much with these guys. He's going to be at the back end of great. We haven't seen it yet. But I think this year, he could be. Brenton Strange. He is a starting tight end, technically speaking, in the NFL. Brenton Strange. Let that sink in. Now, fair play to him. He's in the league. I hope he has a great career. But again, this is kind of what I'm talking about when I talk about the NFL, the tight end talent in the NFL is underwhelming. Find me another position where someone like Brenton Strange is starting at wide receiver, at running back, at quarterback, at corner. I don't think you can find it. Especially where there's only one guy usually on the field at that point. I know corners, you can have 3 corners on the field. You only have one, for the most part, tight end on the field. And he was all right last year. In his defense, he was all right last year. 411 yards, 40 receptions, 2 touchdowns, but by definition, a replacement level tight end. And I don't think he's going ahead of Tyler Higbee either. Elijah Arroyo, rookie from Miami, drafted by the Seahawks. A really interesting projection with Arroyo here. I think he gives you more than enough as a blocker. I don't think he's not great as a blocker, but I think he gives you more than a lot of other quarterbacks on this list, actually. And as a mostly pass-catching tight end, he's really good as a vertical receiving threat. He's a good route runner. He was absolutely chefing guys up at the Senior Bowl, really nimble for his size. I could see him filling that kind of DK Metcalf role, actually, for what it's worth, because they've already got Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba as the slot receivers. They'll want to get them on the field. You could see, I reckon, Arroyo lined up close to the offensive line. You might have kind of like a kind of condensed formation, almost like a bunch. But I would not be surprised if we saw Arroyo technically being an outside wide receiver, not necessarily right to the sideline, but being that guy that is the furthest outside receiver. And he was just, again, in the Senior Bowl, looked absolutely fantastic. And the Seahawks really like this guy. From how they've spoken about him, they seem to think that he would be, like a top, first round pick if he was healthy for the whole year. So I really like his potential in this offense. And could he be great? I could honestly see it. I could see it. I'm gonna plant my flag a bit here with some of these rookies. And I think Elijah Arroyo could have a great season. We'll see. Again, Seahawks fans or any other fans, if you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. Jonnu Smith, he has been a replacement level tight end for his whole career, but been a journeyman. New York, Atlanta, Tennessee. Then had a great year with the Dolphins in 2024. His skill set of being positionally versatile, you can line him up anywhere, being great with the ball in his hands. He had a play for Tennessee where he took an end around kind of jet sweep. And I think he scored a touchdown from that a few years ago. And I'm sure Mike McDaniel and the staff there saw that and thought, this guy's going to fit our offense perfectly. They need a bit more weight, need a bit more height. They need to get away from the speed that they've really made their offensive USP for the last few years. And he is a really great complementary weapon to Waddle, to Hill, as that third big receiver, basically. Interestingly, though, Mike Gesicki had a pretty similar year in 2021 as a fairly similar kind of prospect as a pretty similar tight end stylistically for what it's worth. So there's definitely an element of the scheme helping him out there, but I think he is going to continue to be good for the Dolphins. And let's put him there after Dalton Kincaid. Now, Mike Gesicki, he's a reliable third receiving threat for the Dolphins, for the Bengals, obviously after T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I don't think he's better than Jonnu Smith. I don't think he's better than Mason Taylor. I don't think he's better than Dalton Schultz. I don't think he's better than Jake Ferguson. I'll put him there. So my theory so far of a lot of replacement level tight ends maybe isn't the case. Maybe it's just a lot of good tight ends. We'll see. Still a few more to go. Noah Gray. The Chiefs are, in 12 personnel, interestingly, the second most in the NFL. 34%. So over a third of their snaps offensively, they have two tight ends on the field. And that, I think, is because of Rashid Rice getting injured and because of the other guys being more kind of like speedsters that you want to use in sort of different styles and different formations for different plays, really. And Noah Gray is a good tight end too behind Travis Kelce. He kind of lets Travis Kelce be that role that he wants to play as more of that receiving threat. And Noah Gray can come in and kind of clean up when Kelce's kind of missing that step like he is. Now, he had 452 yards, which for a tight end too, nothing to shake a stick at, don't get me wrong. But he doesn't excel at anything, I think. Despite having good production, despite playing well, again, I think he's a replacement level tight end, and I'd put him behind Hunter Henry. Or no, I think he's better than Hunter Henry. I'd rather have Noah Gray than Hunter Henry. Chig Okonkwo, a fantasy darling himself, ran a 4.52 at the combine, 94th percentile, but not actually done much in terms of production at all. I was told to, I thought 2 years ago, I picked him up on waivers. I thought he was going to win me my fantasy league. Nope, I am terrible at fantasy. He did not win my fantasy league. I think he's replaceable. Despite those traits, he's not done anything. I'll put him there. I'd rather have Noah Gray, definitely. Now, David Njoku, he's the definition of that kind of fringe, great, good tight end, I would say. Consistently produces, 600 odd yards, 900 yards, 500 yards last 3 years. He's good after the catch, mismatch weapon for the Browns. I think he's going to pair really nicely with Harold Fannon Jr. I expect more 12 personnel from the Browns this year. I've already said. Is he great? I think he probably is. I think he probably is great, but he's right on the cusp. He's definitely better than Kincaid. Let's put him at the back end of great. Pat Freiermuth, he is the poster child of good tight end, I think. You can expect him to be a reliable target. He's going to put up decent numbers, not dynamic, not, better at anything than anyone else is in the good tier. I think he's just pretty solidly a good tight end. I'd rather have Dalton Schultz, but I'd take Freiermuth over Ferguson. I think that's fair. Sam LaPorta, he is a great receiving threat as a tight end. He had 1,065 yards as a rookie. Interestingly, that's what PFF had him down as, but then when I looked at other places like StatsMuse and ESPN, he only had 886 receiving yards, so I don't know why there's a massive difference there, basically a difference of 200 receiving yards. So I'm not sure what's gone on there, not sure which number to believe. I'm usually a bit of a PFF guy with my stats. I think what they do is very good statistically, but those are the two. I don't know which one is the real one. But anyway, I think he's great at picking up yards after the catch. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown are just great security blankets for Jared Goff. And he did have a down year, quote unquote, with 777 receiving yards. But the Lions put up the most yards of any offense in the league last year. And that's because someone like Jameson Williams was in there. That's because the run game was so dominant. That's because Amon-Ra is so good. So I don't really think that's a knock on LaPorta there. I think there's just a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. And that's sometimes how it goes. I think Sam LaPorta is a great tight end. I'd put him ahead of Tucker Kraft as well. So, yeah. Oronde Gadsden. I had to put him on here due to the fact that Will Disley's drops are so egregious that I couldn't just have him for the Chargers. That would be so depressing. He is going to be a pure big slot tight end, really. He's not even going to... He's hardly a tight end. He's basically like a big receiving threat for what it's worth. I think that therefore that Will Disley and Conklin, the other tight end on the roster, will see time. The Chargers love to run the ball. Gadsden won't be on the field for that for the most part, considering his build and what he's good at. But having a good receiving threat, which Gadsden is, with Justin Herbert, who I think is one of the best pure passers of the football in the league, I think he's got a chance to carve out a decent role in this offense where there is, now we've got obviously Trey Harris, there is Quinton Johnson, obviously Ladner Conkey, but I could see Gadsden putting up 500 odd yards in his rookie season, which I don't think people are going to expect from him. But is he realistically going to be any better than a replacement tight end? Would he be better than Noah Gray? Would he be better than Chig Okonkwo? I don't think so. So I'm going to put him behind those two guys. I know, I gassed him up to then put him down. But again, I don't think it's about production necessarily. I think it's about what you offer, and can anyone else offer that? And I think Gadsden's skill set can be offered by a lot of tight ends in most draft classes. TJ Hockenson, one of the league's better tight ends. Almost like a bit like a watered down George Kittle. I think he's good in the run game. I think he's great as a passing threat. And again, that having both of those things on your resume makes your tight end ability so much better. He's been great for Minnesota. It was really good in Detroit, but I think he's been even better for the Vikings. He really rounds off the Vikings receiver core so nicely. You've got Justin Jefferson as that wide receiver 1, Jordan Addison as that wide receiver 2A, and then TJ Hockenson really is that wide receiver 2B. And I think having Addison, Hockenson, and Justin Jefferson gives you a great triangle of like different overlapping skill sets, which is what makes the Vikings passing attack so good, and why I'm really high on someone like JJ McCarthy and the Vikings really for this year. And Kevin O'Connell puts him in a great position to succeed. So I think he's great. I'd have Hockenson over Andrews as well next year. Would I have Loveland over Hockenson? Oof. No. I'd have Hockenson over Loveland, I think. Noah Fant. He, again, another first-round tight end. Iowa State. Classic. This guy ticks all the boxes for tight ends. Kind of a first-round underwhelming player. Taken in the first round. He was the 20th overall pick in 2019. Been a bust, let's be realistic, relative to his draft position, but players don't bust, draft positions do. He's been pretty solid after that. He's not a bad player by any means, just not a particularly good one. Is he a good tight end? I mean, looking at the good tier, I'd have Fant ahead of Theo Johnson. So, yeah, I guess he is a good tight end. Put him in there, ahead of Evan Engram. I'd have him ahead of Darnell Washington as well. And I'd have him ahead of Mike Gesicki. I think Fant's shown more than Gesicki has. Cole Kmet. This is why I'm doing the rankings. One of my kind of TED Talks I could do about the NFL is how Cole Kmet is the embodiment of this whole video, which is that I don't think there are a lot of great tight ends in the NFL. And I think Bears fans think that Cole Kmet is great. I know he grew up in Chicago. I know he's a homegrown kid. I know Bears fans love that. We all love that as fans, but we got to cut through the noise here. How good is he really? I think he's bang average, guys. I think he's bang average. I don't see how he's better than Noah Fant. I don't see how he's better than Dalton Schultz. I don't see how he's better than Dalton Kincaid. He's not a great tight end, I think, by definition. Is he going to produce in Ben Johnson's offense? Of course. Has he produced in his past? Yes. But I don't think he excels in anything that other tight ends can't also do. So yeah, again, we'll put him in good. I think I'd have him over Noah Fant. I think that's fair. But Bears fans, he's not great. Trust me. Cade Otton. I was quite stunned when I was watching this guy. He weirdly put up back-to-back 600-yard receiving seasons in the last 2 years, and in both of those years had 300 yards after the catch. Not sure how. I don't know how that happens, but that's kind of what I'm saying, is that he's, doesn't have a great athletic or physical profile, but still puts up good numbers. Average tight ends, I think, can clearly produce in the NFL. But is that just because they run kind of like 5-yard outs, they run seams? I seem like a tight end hater. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm a tight end hater, guys. Maybe. This is kind of dawning on me now. Cade Otton, again, he's a good tight end. I'd put him behind Noah Fant, I guess. Jesus. I'm looking at it and it's interesting. Jatavian Sanders, I really liked him coming out of Texas last year. I really thought he could be something, and he just didn't make an impact on a really bad receiving team. He, couldn't really do much, carve himself out a notable role on an offense with an undrafted free agent in Jalen Coker, who did. OAP Adam Thielen. Love Adam Thielen. Respect what he's done. But he's definitely at the end of his career. And rookie Xavier Legette. And then he's sharing a tight end room with Tommy Tremble, who is currently at the bottom of replacement level tight end. had a great play against the Saints where he, caught it where you had a great run after the catch and had a hurdle, picked up extra yards after that hurdle. I think that's what I was expecting from Sanders more often than he was able to show it. And he also showed that he could be a great downfield receiving threat as well at points. I think with a better Bryce Young, maybe we could see a better Jatavian Sanders. He's definitely better than Tommy Tremble. And I'm looking at Theo Johnson and I feel like he is a replaceable tight end. So let's put Theo Johnson lower because I think that's fair. And then let's put Jatavian Sanders. We'll put him at the bottom end of good because I think the flashes that I saw I liked, but I need to see that this season or he's going to get moved down a tier for this time next year. Tyler Warren and the Colts, match made in heaven. I think it was the most obvious mock draft thing ever, having the Colts take Tyler Warren, and it actually happened. The Colts must have had the draft card written months in advance. He is such a dynamic receiving weapon. He projects, for me, like a Gronk-esque kind of player. Not that he's going to become Rob Gronkowski, but Tyler Warren, for me, has that combination of the blocking and receiving ability, and more than just receiving, he's an offensive playmaker ability. And I think he's going to be great after the catch. He's going to be a great weapon for Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is going to see time. And I think Daniel Jones especially would pump Tyler Warren targets, I think. So I'm going to put him in the back end of great Tyler Warren. I preferred him to Loveland, but I think Loveland is in the better position for now. I think that's fair. Zach Ertz was a great tight end and is genuinely still a good one. 800 yards last year, 8 touchdowns. Like the old dog still got some fight in him left. He's not going to offer much more than he did last year by, being a bit older now. And with Debo there, he might see kind of his target share decline a bit. But he's good. He's good. This is clearly my hypothesis isn't right because I'm getting a lot of good tight ends, not a lot of replaceable ones. I would have him ahead of Darnell Washington, I think, at this point in his career, I reckon. Terrance Ferguson, final rookie I'm expecting quite a lot from this rookie tight end class because a lot of them were drafted pretty early on and the Rams took him really early. And ironically, Ferguson reminds me a lot of Tyler Higbee. I think they project very similarly. I think Higbee's probably a better blocker. I think it's quite interesting that they love Ferguson so much when you need to block. If you're a Rams tight end, they have their slot receivers be tight end 0.5s in that offense by being great receiving threats. You've got Jordan Whittington, you've got Puka Nacua, those guys get involved in the run game. And I don't think Ferguson does that or has that tenacity to him. So maybe he's going to be used more as a receiving threat. They'll have Higbee as more of the blocking guy. I don't know. But he's a very balanced tight end overall. I think he's going to fit seamlessly into McVay's offense. A lot of screen passes, wheel routes. He's good versus zone coverage. Can find that soft spot really nicely. I'm expecting him to surprise people this year. I think Terrance Ferguson is someone that if you are a fantasy guy, and now I'm not good at fantasy, so please do take my advice with a pinch of salt, but I think Ferguson could be a bit of a fantasy waiver wire pickup later in the season. He's going to go in the good tier, though, which I'm going now double down on this good tier. I think he'll be slightly better than Dalton Schultz. Not quite as good as Mason Taylor, though, I think. Will Disley, this guy's replaceable. Put him in that tier. I'd have Hunter Henry ahead of him, but his drops last year, man, awful. Michael Mayer, the bridesmaid, never the bride. Now that the Raiders have Brock Bowers, really limited receiving production, but he's a good blocker. I think the Raiders will use more 12 personnel this year. I don't know why they would keep him if they weren't going to. I think it's quite a nice combination to have Mayer and Bowers on the field at the same time. I think that would put defenses in a big bind. And if they didn't trade him, it makes me believe they want to keep him to do something exactly like that. There's a potential for him to do more, but this regime isn't tied to him. They didn't draft him, and he's kind of really caught in a limbo at the moment, Mayer. It's a shame that his career kind of has started as it has. There's hope for him yet. I think he offers more than Jatavian Sanders. No, I'll put him in good. I think he could be a good tight end when it's all said and done. Isaiah Likely really showed what he could do this year. 111 yards versus Kansas City in week 1. Never hit those highs again, but he did have a nice 3-game stretch at the end of the season. So that was in week 18 in the 2 playoff games. Had 73 yards and a touchdown versus the Bills. And it's not a pass-heavy offense, right? We already have Zay Flowers. We already have Mark Andrews. We already have Derrick Henry running the ball. Lamar Jackson running the ball. We already have, Mark Andrews as well himself. So Bateman takes them as well. So there's a lot of mouths to feed and very few morsels to go around in that offense, I guess. He's a high-end tight end too. I think for a lot of teams, likely it would be their tight end 1. But I think when it's all said and done, he is only a good tight end. Where's he going to go, though? I think he's a better receiver than Evan Engram. Or could be a better receiver than Evan Engram. I think they have to kind of go together, those 2 guys. Last 3 now. We've already had Jonnu Smith, so last 2. Actually, Dallas Goedert. I think previously he's been on the fringe of elite throughout his career, but I think he's now just kind of very firmly in the great tier. He's had 711 yards last year, 613 yards the year before that, 843 yards, 922 yards in 2022, 2021. Really strong yards after the catch number each year. He's quite similar to TJ Hockenson in the sense that he is that kind of 3/2 for the Eagles. I think, though, that Devonta Smith is better than Jordan Addison, so it does very much go A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, but that's just because Goedert is victim to playing with better receivers than anyone else. But in any other situation, he would be that kind of second receiving threat. And in some games, he is. So I think he is great. And the question is he better than Hockenson, or is Hockenson better than him? Oof. I think Goedert has been better, but I wonder about that trajectory. Now, for 2025, I'm going to stick with Hockenson. And finally, Kyle Pitts, quite a good one to end on here, I think. Put your hand up if you've been publicly humiliated by waiting for that Kyle Pitts resurgence. Your hand's got to be up as well, because everyone has been. Everyone has been. Since that rookie year when he put up over 1,000 yards, he's just fell off a cliff, never to be seen again, metaphorically speaking, of course. He saw the lowest target share of his career last year, lowest snap percentage of his career last year, second lowest yards per route run. We all want to fix Kyle Pitts. It's that kind of toxic relationship, I'll be able to change him. And we're always hoping that we can see that rookie season Kyle Pitts. And, with Drake London now cementing himself as an alpha wide receiver 1, with Darnell Mooney looking like a really high-end wide receiver 2, with Bijan Robinson there now, I just don't know. I just don't think we're going to see that season again from Kyle Pitts. There is the hope that Michael Penix, as a gunslinger, can just spray the ball around that offense. He did so in Washington with 3 receivers. Maybe, in that same way, we will have Kyle Pitts be that third. And obviously he's better than Matt Ryan towards the end of his career. He was better than, obviously, Kirk Cousins, and was obviously a lot better than Desmond Ridder. I just don't know, though, man. I just don't know. I don't think you can say at the moment that Kyle Pitts is anything more than good. I'd have him ahead of Noah Fant, but no, I can't put him ahead of Noah Fant. I can't put Kyle Pitts ahead of Noah Fant. That then, let's have a look. So my hypothesis was that the NFL does not have a lot of great or elite tight ends. And I think looking at them, George Kittle is the 1, Bowers 2, McBride 3, Travis Kelce 4, Hockenson 5, Dallas Goedert 6, Loveland 7, Mark Andrews 8, Sam LaPorta 9, Tucker Kraft 10. Yeah, I mean, most teams in the NFL do not have a great tight end. Clearly, I've got 13 total guys in the elite and great. So about a third of the NFL only have a great or elite. The vast majority, as we can see, not replacement level, so my hypothesis wasn't right then, but a lot of them are good. And I think a lot of people would argue that quite a few of those guys in that good tier could probably go down to replacement level. But what do you think? Do you agree with my rankings? Have I put one of your tight ends too high or too low, or anyone else's, if that matter? I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure you like the video for more. Make sure you like the video. Make sure it pushes it out to other people. Get that 1,000 likes again. Love that bar, love that benchmark. And make sure you subscribe for more off-season content. We're doing more rankings. We're going to have summer scouting. We're going to have predictions. It's all coming at you this off-season, so make sure you subscribe to not miss another video. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. This has been Corbs NFL. I'll see you on the next video.